You know that feeling when you're scrolling through LinkedIn at 11 p.m., seeing another post about someone's life-changing MBA experience with their promotion to senior director, and you think to yourself, maybe that's the missing piece? Picture this. You're lying in bed, phone glowing in the dark, Googling best MBA programs 2024, while your brain spins with anxiety about your career. You start calculating tuition costs, wondering if you could swing the loans, imagining yourself in those glossy campus photos. And somewhere deep down, there's this voice whispering that a $200,000 MBA is the golden ticket between where you are now and where you desperately want to be. But here's what nobody's telling you, and honestly, this might sting a little. For most people, an MBA isn't an investment in their future. It's a $250,000 psychological trap that delays their financial independence by a decade. My name is Neo, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, specifically the expensive stories we tell ourselves about what we need to succeed. If you're someone who wants to build real wealth and career freedom through strategic choices instead of expensive credentials that might actually trap you in debt, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up saving you from what could be the most expensive mistake of your life. Most financial gurus will tell you that education is always a good investment. They'll say you can't put a price on knowledge. They'll throw around statistics about how people with graduate degrees earn more over their lifetime. And honestly, they're not completely wrong about the averages. But here's the thing they're missing. They're treating all MBAs like they're created equal, and they're completely ignoring the massive opportunity cost and psychological burden that comes with spending 2 years and $200. 000 on a degree that for many people won't actually change their career, trajectory in the way they expect. The conventional wisdom says an MBA opens doors, but what if for most people those doors were already unlocked, and the MBA is just an expensive way to walk through them 2 years later than you could have otherwise? Here's my core thesis, and I really want you to think about this. An MBA is not a career accelerator for most people. It's a $200,000 psychological security blanket that teaches you to outsource your sense of worth and potential to a piece of paper. The real trap isn't the degree itself. It's using an MBA as expensive permission to believe you're worthy of pursuing opportunities you could have pursued without it. Think about it like this. An MBA is like buying a $200,000 gym membership because you don't believe you can get fit without one. Sure, the gym has equipment and trainers and a sauna, but you could have started running for free 2 years ago. The degree doesn't teach you business as much as it teaches you that you belong in business, and that's a very expensive lesson in self-confidence. Why does this matter so much? Because your brain makes radically different decisions when it feels trapped by debt versus when it has walking away money and options. When you stack $100,000, $200,000 of student debt on your life, plus 2 years of lost income, your nervous system quietly shifts into survival mode. That's not just financial pressure. It's a fundamental psychological shift that affects every career decision you make for the next decade. Let's break down what's actually happening in your brain when you start thinking about getting an MBA. When you're feeling stuck in your career, when you're anxious about your future, your brain goes into problem-solving mode. And our brains love concrete solutions, things we can do, steps we can take, boxes we can check. An MBA feels like a solution. It's tangible, prestigious, something you can point to and say, I did that. But here's what's actually happening psychologically. You're experiencing what researchers call credential anxiety. You're convinced that the reason you're not where you want to be is because you're missing a piece of paper. Not because you haven't been strategic about your career moves, not because you haven't been building the right relationships or taking calculated risks. No, it must be the degree. Behavioral economists call this the zero risk bias. We prefer to reduce a small risk to zero rather than reduce a huge risk significantly. You're terrified of the risk of not advancing, so you take on the guaranteed negative return of massive debt and lost time just to quiet that anxiety. Here's where it gets really interesting. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that financial stress is one of the top stressors for adults, and chronic financial strain is linked to anxiety and depression. Studies on scarcity mindset by Malinathan and Shafir show that when your mind is preoccupied with money worries, your cognitive performance drops by the equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. You literally think less clearly when you feel financially trapped. Let me give you a concrete example. Say you do a full-time MBA that costs $150,000, plus you give up 2 years of your $75,000 salary. That's $300,000 in total opportunity cost. You graduate with $1,200, $1,500 in monthly loan payments. That number sits in the back of your head every time you think about changing jobs, pushing back on a toxic boss, or taking a calculated risk. Before the MBA, you might have said, if this job sucks, I'll quit and find something better. After the MBA, it becomes, I can't afford to leave yet. I need the salary to justify this degree. The freedom you thought the MBA would give you is the very thing it quietly takes away. The second major psychological shift is what I call the credential treadmill. When you don't have an internal sense of value, when you don't know what you're actually good at, you try to buy external validators. You think, I'm not a business leader yet, but if Harvard or Wharton stamps my forehead, then I'm a leader. You're outsourcing your self-esteem to an institution, hoping the prestige will shine on you and hide your insecurities. But here's the problem. The credential treadmill never stops. First, it's the bachelor's degree, then the MBA, then the PMP certification, then the executive program. You become a professional student rather than a professional value creator. Real wealth is built by people who create value, not people who collect certificates. And frankly, when you walk into business school wanting to start a company or do something unique, you're suddenly surrounded by 500 other people, all obsessing over the same 3 things: consulting, investment banking, and maybe big tech. Social psychology tells us we're mimicry machines. If everyone around you is measuring their worth by whether they got an interview with McKinsey, you'll start measuring your worth that way too. Even if you hate travel and love work-life balance, you'll find yourself competing for a job that requires 80 hours of travel per week, just because that's what the herd values. I've seen creative entrepreneurial people go into business school and come out as cookie-cutter consultants because the social pressure to conform was overwhelming. Third is the decision-making shift from growth mode to survival mode. When you don't have massive fixed costs, your decision-making can be long-term. You can ask, what positions me best 5 years from now, instead of what keeps me afloat this month. Research in behavioral economics shows that scarcity narrows your focus. You become extremely good at dealing with immediate problems, but worse at long-term thinking. Let me paint you 2 scenarios. Version A, you do a full-time MBA, graduate with $1,400 in monthly loan payments. A startup offers you equity and huge upside but lower starting pay. Logically, you know this could be a game changer in 5 years. Emotionally, you panic. You think, I can't take that pay cut, I need stability. Version B, you skip the MBA, keep costs low, build skills through side projects. When that same startup offer comes, you think, yeah, I can handle this risk. The educated version of you might actually make more fear-based decisions than the scrappier version, purely because of fixed costs and pressure. Fourth is opportunity recognition. When you have walking away money, your brain scans for upside. When you're debt heavy, your brain scans for safety. Your reticular activating system, the filter that decides what gets your attention, completely changes based on your financial pressure. Before the MBA trap, you might hear about a small but growing e-commerce brand and think, could I help with marketing on the side? After the MBA, with loans and prestige to maintain, your brain tags the same opportunity as too risky, not prestigious enough. The social and career impact is equally significant. Yes, elite credentials impact hiring decisions and starting salaries. The Graduate Management Admission Council reports median starting salaries around $125,000 for MBA grads. But those stats are averages, heavily skewed by certain industries and top-tier schools. And with those higher incomes comes lifestyle creep. Your peer group becomes people making high incomes, but also having high expenses. You're less likely to live with roommates and stack cash because your identity is now professional adult with an MBA. Finally, there's the long-term compound effect. Vanguard and Fidelity research shows that even modest, consistent investing in your 20s can lead to hundreds of thousands more by retirement compared to starting in your 30s. When you spend 2 years in school plus 10 years paying off loans, you're giving compounding a massive head start in the wrong direction. But here's where most people mess this up. They either romanticize the MBA as a magic key or demonize it completely. Both extremes are wrong. Mistake number 1 is using the MBA as an emotional escape hatch. I hate my job, I feel stuck, so MBA. You're not running toward a clear target, you're running away from discomfort with an expensive solution. Mistake number 2 is assuming averages apply to you. You see median MBA salaries and think, that'll be me, without factoring in school ranking, geography, or industry. Mistake number 3 is not running the emotional numbers, asking what a $1,400 monthly payment will feel like when you have kids or want to switch careers. Let me reframe this entire conversation. This isn't about whether MBAs are good or bad. It's about becoming the type of person who doesn't outsource their future to a credential. Instead of asking, should I get an MBA? Ask, what problem am I actually trying to solve? Is it confidence, industry knowledge, network? Because there are often cheaper, smarter paths to solve those specific problems. Think about opportunity cost. Every dollar an hour you put into a degree is a dollar an hour you're not putting into building something else. A side business, a portfolio, specialized skills, real relationships. That $200,000 degree could fund a 20% down payment on a $400,000 property, 5 years of aggressive index fund investing, or multiple business attempts with real runway. Now let's do a reality check with the math, and I'll be gentle but honest. Say an MBA costs $150,000 in tuition, plus $60,000 in living expenses over 2 years. Plus, you skip earning your current $75,000 salary for 2 years. That's $150,000 plus $60,000 plus $150,000 plus $360,000 total economic cost. If you borrow $120,000 at 7% over 10 years, your monthly payment is approximately $1,400. Over 10 years, that's $168,000 total payments, $48,000 in interest alone. Now compare 2 scenarios over 10 years after age 30. Scenario MBA, you make $130,000 post MBA, but between loans, taxes, and lifestyle creep, you invest $12,000 annually. After 10 years at 7% returns, approximately $165,000 in investments. Scenario no MBA. You grow to $100,000 through strategic career moves, but with no loan payments and lower lifestyle costs, you invest $25,000 annually. After 10 years at 7% returns, approximately $345,000 in investments. The non-MBA version ends up with over $180,000 more in investments, simply because of breathing room to save aggressively. And that's before factoring in the mental bandwidth to start side businesses or make bolder career moves. But here's the opportunity cost that really matters. If you took that $360,000 total cost and invested it in index funds returning 8% annually over 30 years, you'd have approximately $3.6 million. The question isn't, will I get a raise? It's, will this degree generate an extra $3.6 million of wealth over my lifetime? Here's what I want you to understand. You are not behind because you don't have an MBA. You're not doomed if you do have one either. What matters is whether you're awake to the psychological game you're playing. The core message is this: do not use a degree to buy a sense of worth, direction, or permission. Those things come from action, from building real skills, taking calculated risks, and creating walking away money so no employer or credential decides your fate. If you're on the fence about getting an MBA, ask yourself harder questions. What if I put this same money and time into building something else? What if I committed to becoming so good they have to pay me more, degree or not? What would my life look like in 10 years if I optimized for flexibility instead of prestige? You don't need to be anti-MBA. You need to be pro-you. Pro-breathing room. Pro-options. Pro-identity shift that comes from the inside out, not from a logo on your resume. Your future self doesn't care how impressive your LinkedIn headline sounded at 29. They care whether you bought them freedom, peace of mind, and the ability to walk away from anything that doesn't fit. That choice starts now, not with collecting expensive credentials, but with building real value, real skills, and real wealth that no institution can take away.